We're back, Cupcake and Oil Slicks. In the prison cell? In the prison cell? That's kind of hot. I guess oil and water really do go together. Who knew? They really played King Princess in the background. Okay. The scene wasn't lesbian enough. They had to sprinkle an extra layer of lesbianism upon the lesbianism in that scene. There were so many lesbian layers in that scene, it created a lesbian vortex. And that's what Jason Victor got sucked into at the end. Vi's lesbianism really won out over her concern about her sister unaliving herself. She is not God's strongest soldier. The woman has her priorities, and I can respect that. The way Vi pushed Caitlyn against the wall, it made me feel something. That something was homosexuality. I do have to eat my words. I mean, if we're lucky, Vi and Caitlyn might confess their feelings to each other in season 2, and we might even see a handshake. And they said, take those words and put them back in your filthy mouth. And so I am. Okay, the grabbing, the chest kisses, the eye contact, the fumbling with the belt buckle, the laughing, Vi's back muscles. Put this scene in an art museum in Paris. I mean, it's quite literally artwork, and it's also French. There is so much for us to discuss about this season. For one, Vi changing up her hair after her intense lesbian situationship ended. The writers did their research. I am a fan of the dark hair. It did things to me. Yes, the things were homosexual. The physical violence and the spitting, it's their love language. Cottagecore lesbians are out, tooth and nail lesbians are in. The eye patch may have left me with child. A child who also has a tiny eye patch. No wonder this woman has side chicks. I mean, traitorous side chicks, but side chicks nonetheless. Oh, we'll get into the Maddie situation later. I know Ambessa is evil, but would. I know Jinx committed atrocities, but she's just a baby. We all make mistakes. We all deserve second chances. I mean, they could have given her a fresh start, but instead, they blew it. I've known Mini Jinx for like 5 seconds, but if anything ever happened to her... Oh wait, it did. You don't get to play with my heart like that. I mean, this is Arcane. The trauma and the suffering, it's kind of their thing. Repressed gay situationship, final boss. I think this final scene of Jason Victor pressed together whilst they're sucked into the void may have been gayer than what went down in that prison cell. Or it's not gay if you're being transported when it happens. You never know with those two. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video I'm just going to be giving you my thoughts on CaitVi in season 2 of Arcane League of Legends. So many people have been asking me to make this video, and in the words of Britney Spears, I was born to make you happy. I should shave my hair. As a disclaimer, I'm just a fan of the show. I have never played League of Legends, so I'm not ovaries deep in the lore. Just your mother, respectfully. I have to say, I really enjoyed season 2, and just like with season 1, I'm once again in awe of the artistry and the visual storytelling. The attention to detail in this show is phenomenal, and the visual aspects are undoubtedly the most impressive thing about it. There's a variation of artistic styles which are seamlessly blended together throughout this season. The compositions are thoughtful and smooth, and it's fascinating how you can see every flicker of emotion in the characters' faces. And it's those smaller details which add so much to the characterization and the emotional storytelling in this season. I think one of my favorite visual storytelling moments this season is the scene where Ambessa is stoking the fire, both literally and figuratively, when talking to Caitlyn. Ambessa is a dangerous character who is manipulating and encouraging Caitlyn's anger to serve her own means of destruction and chaos. And it's incredible how the imagery and visuals in this scene really enhance both characterization and the narrative. Another moment of visual storytelling I loved, and this is not something I clocked myself until I saw somebody else point it out, was Jason Victor's final scene where they are positioned with their heads pressed together, which portrays the intellectual connection that bonds them to one another, and how the strength of that bond is the reason for their ending up in that situation. And it's those moments which reveal just how much thought has gone into the visual storytelling element of this production. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. Moving on to Caitlyn and Violet, it feels so weird to call Vi Violet. CaitVi, cupcake and oil slick. I'm gonna start with the positives. In terms of the physical aspect of their relationship, like I said earlier, this season gave us so much more than I was expecting. I loved how thoughtful their first kiss was, and how it was born out of a moment of Vi's vulnerability, and again contained the visual storytelling element, with Vi dropping her gauntlets, which of course symbolized how she was letting her guard down for Caitlyn. I very much interpreted this kiss as Caitlyn responding to Vi's fears and reassuring her, which gave it emotional layers and was what Vi needed in that moment. It was really tender and thoughtful. I also appreciated how it was Caitlyn taking the lead with their first kiss and Vi taking the lead with their second kiss, and how both kisses were a result of emotional revelations. It created a nice parallel. In their second kiss, Vi realizes that with Caitlyn's gesture of essentially allowing Jinx to go free, just how much she cares for her, trusts her, and above all, how she's choosing her, which again gives this scene emotional layers. Their love scene was also beautifully done. It was hungry, charged, and urgent, but tasteful, tender, and human at the same time. It just conveyed such a range of emotions that was compelling to watch. The back muscles may have also made it compelling, just saying. And you can really tell that both the writers and the artists were really committed to this scene, and we thank them for their service. So all of this reveals just how thoughtful and layered the physical aspect of their relationship was this season. I also appreciated how emotionally layered their ending felt and how much was conveyed in this scene with such little dialogue. Vi is humming the tune connected to her mother and sister, which suggests that she's grieving their loss and that her thoughts are with everything that's happened. And in response to this, Caitlyn acknowledges that loss and the painful aspects of the history between them by asking Vi if she's still in this fight. And I interpreted this question as Caitlyn checking in with Vi to see if she's still with her, both in her fight for justice and in their relationship. Because it would be understandable if Vi needed to take some time to herself after everything that had happened. I also interpreted Vi telling Caitlyn that she's the dirt under her nails and nothing's gonna clean her out as not only a reassurance of her commitment to Caitlyn and the good fight, but I felt it also had connotations of their class difference and how their enmeshment is entangled in getting their hands dirty, in fighting, which I thought was interesting, but I'd love to know what you guys thought of that line. Please leave your takes in the comment section below. All in all, CaitVi were in a fairly healthy place by the end, and I felt their relationship was left on a thought-provoking yet romantic and hopeful note. Something which is still very rare for lesbian couples to have in mainstream media, so all things considered, I'm taking this as a win for the lesbians. I mean, if you compare CaitVi to the rest of the ships on the show, they certainly had the most explicitly romantic interactions and the most positive ending too. I mean, sure, Time Bomb in the alternate universe was wholesome, touching, and artistically captivating, but it only existed in an AU. Mel and Jace were more or less forgotten about after a single crumb of affection, and Jace and Victor were thrown apart, enmeshed in other things, and then brought back together in what I perceived to be a romantic but ultimately ambiguous way. It's clear there's a deep connection there between the two and maybe some repressed longing, but they weren't made canon. So, taking all of that into consideration, again, I think CaitVi did pretty well and the writers came through for them. Now, moving on to the general CaitVi storyline. There was obviously a lot of high emotional intensity between them this season. Caitlyn is dealing with the death of her mother, the grief of it, the anger at Jinx over it, and the weight of responsibility amidst the growing political tensions on top of all of that. And Vi is dealing with the loss of who her sister was, balancing her loyalties against her ethics, her upbringing, and navigating her feelings towards Caitlyn between all of that. So I'm not surprised things were messy and tense between them to begin with, or that Caitlyn lashed out at Vi physically in such an emotionally heightened moment. Their relationship is complex and gritty because both characters are complex and gritty. They grew up in entirely different worlds and neither of them are 100% wholesome cinnamon roll types. So with Caitlyn lashing out at Vi, I'm certainly not trying to excuse physical violence. And no one has to like this scene, but within the emotional context of what is happening in that moment, there is an explanation for it, and you can also see the glimmer of hurt and regret in Caitlyn's eyes after she's lashed out. And this conveys that it didn't happen out of malicious intent, it was a human error. Also, this show isn't Animal Crossing, it deals with elements of toxicity and nuance in characters, including in Caitlyn and Vi. And in terms of the power balance in their relationship, it's not like Vi goes running back to Caitlyn after this incident, or that Caitlyn comes back to Vi and just expects things to be how they were. They regain a balance of trust and respect, with Caitlyn atoning for her actions by taking significant steps to make it up to Vi. She betrays Ambessa in order to help Vi save Vander, and despite her hatred of Jinx, she essentially allows her to go free as a display of trust in Vi and as a gesture that she's putting Vi before herself. So Caitlyn's actions not only show character development, but they also prove just how much she truly cares for Vi. Now, with the whole Maddie thing, at first, before I knew Maddie was a traitor, I did feel like her affair with Caitlyn felt slightly contrived, and I was confused about why they'd included it. Personally, I don't think Caitlyn having a distraction adds anything to the story or her characterization, but I can see how it makes sense within the context of the wider narrative, considering that Maddie is a traitor who is trying to get information out of Caitlyn, and taking advantage of Caitlyn's sexuality is a way to achieve that. And where Vi dealt with their breakup by going off the rails and distracting herself with alcohol and fighting, Caitlyn dealt with it by distracting herself with her job and with another woman. So again, whilst I don't think the Maddie affair was necessary, I understand its purpose. And I don't really have any strong feelings about it either way. I didn't like it, but I'm not outraged by it either. It was very obvious to me that Caitlyn had no emotional investment in Maddie whatsoever, and it was treated as a non-issue by Vi because it is a non-issue. What I will say is Maddie being revealed as a traitor did catch me off guard. Looking back, it's so obvious, and I'm sure other people saw it coming a mile away, but I just didn't, and when it was revealed, I was shooketh. The thing about CaitVi's arc in season 2 is A, considering what happened in season 1, it was always going to be emotionally complex and messy, and B, the writers obviously had to create some source of friction between them in order to justify separating them and keeping them apart for the big bringing them back together moment to work. And whilst you can certainly pick apart their choices, I think they could have done a lot worse. I think that in regards to the timing of their love scene, all jokes about the power of pussy aside, it is a bit weird and out of character that Vi would choose to hook up with Caitlyn in that moment instead of running after her sister, who was essentially threatening to unalive herself, especially after they'd reconciled. But I can also understand Vi being caught up in the moment with receiving such a huge gesture from the woman she is deeply in love with and being overwhelmed by it. In all honesty, I do think the love scene would have worked worked better if Jinx had just run off without suggesting she was going to end her life, because that did place Vi in a questionable choice scenario. But again, at the same time, I can understand the whole being so caught up in the moment aspect of it too. I mean, there's nothing that can't be justified about their arc, but the justifications feel a little weak in some places, if that makes sense. So overall, I really enjoyed CaitVi this season, but I do feel like their relationship was slightly emotionally neglected, especially in comparison to season 1, but I think the same can be said about the majority of the characters' relationships in season 2. And all of this simply comes down to the issue of time, which they did not have. It very much felt as though season 2 prioritized the wider narrative, which demanded a lot of focus due to how much was happening and how high the stakes were, in order to get the story told and wrap everybody's arcs up over the individual emotional journeys and development of the characters and their interpersonal relations. Those felt like almost secondary concerns. To me, season 1 managed to strike a better balance between the two, which made it feel more kind of emotionally impactful and satisfying. But that's not to say that season 2 was bad, because it wasn't. It was incredible and I really enjoyed it. But I have to agree with other people who have said that the show would have benefited from 3 seasons in order to allow more time to develop the individual character arcs and relationships alongside the unfolding of the main narrative. So I really enjoyed season 2, but it did have a bit of a rushed feeling. Then again, it also had back muscles. So all is forgiven in my books. Okay guys, those are my thoughts on CaitVi in season 2 of Arcane. Let me know your own thoughts on this season down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.